All right, let's see what you have to say, Ian.
Hello, BlizzCon.
Hi.
So it's been an awesome weekend so far. We've talked a lot about World of Warcraft. We have more to say, most of it looking forward to what's coming next. But for the next 45 minutes,
Thanks for the
we're gonna
resub.
look backwards. We're going to look at the origins of World of Warcraft and tell the story of how we have brought the 2006 experience back here and been able to share it all with you today. That's a game that touched all of our hearts. It's a game that really is the reason why I'm standing here today. It's a game that is the reason, so some could argue that BlizzCon exists at all. Back in 2005,
This is audio.
It was World of Warcraft that forged these powerful ties between people who'd spent long nights running dungeons together, running flags in Warsong Gulch, who wanted to get in a car, get in a plane, cross the country, and come out here to put faces to names and to voices and actually meet the people that they felt like they already knew, thanks to this world that we had created. And it is an
The shirt
incredible
makes my
honor
armpits
to be
uncomfortable.
up here and to be able to speak to the story of how we were able to bring it back. And a lot of that story is actually a technical one. It's about archaeology, it's about restoration. And allow me to introduce, to tell the first part of the story, senior software engineer Omar Gonzalez, who will tell you about the origins of WoW Classic.
Hi, Omar.
Greetings, BlizzCon. My name is Omar Gonzalez, and I'm a senior software engineer on World of Warcraft. I want to take a minute, speaking of history, to talk about a little bit of my own. I first started on World of Warcraft in 2003, when it was first being forged. It means that I was there before Onyxia took her first deep breath, before Ragnaros was awoken too soon, before there was any kind of conflict in Terran Mail and South Shore, before we had even added gnomes to the game. I was there, and I've been working on World of Warcraft ever since. And now it's my great honor to be able to take that version, the memories that we had, back to life to all of us who remember them fondly, and hopefully to a whole new generation. Now, next up, I'm going to be talking about some of the major components of what goes into the making of a game like World of Warcraft. One of the biggest pieces of data is our database data. And what this is are things like the number of hit points a creature has, the amount of stamina on an item, each spawn point in the world. Millions of points of data are stored in tables inside of these databases. Another key component that we work with are art assets.
Thanks, Dexy.
The color of Night Elves shadow melding in Ashenvale. It's the sounds that play when Pyroblast nukes its target. It's the motion of an orc as she swings her axe furiously. The artwork of the WoW, everything that you see and hear is our art assets. The third major component here is the source code. This is a bit of the glue that binds all of this together. It's the instructions that we give to our computers to let them know what to display on the screens and what to play on the speakers. And for our servers, how to interconnect millions of players all around the world. Now, there's actually many more components and pieces that go into game development, but these are the big three that we're going to cover in this presentation. So looking a little bit more into source code. We had to start to get
I don't know what any of this means.
we had to work with. And for source code, we kept track of everything in a repository that keeps track of every change that's ever been made. So here it was simply a matter of going to that repository and asking, what is the first change you know about? How far back does your history go? And it turns out this repository has been tracking changes since 1997. Now, before you go to jumping to any conclusions,
I was 3 years old.
This doesn't necessarily mean that World of Warcraft itself has been in development that long, only that it contains some shared and generic bits of code that started the Warcraft lineage. Now, of course, no source code repository would be complete without bugs. We happened to also find the very first bug fix in our repository shortly thereafter. A few people are ahead of me. The joke here is that this little bit of a function claimed it was going to do one thing, but literally did the exact opposite. The very first bug fix in Warcraft's history. Given that we have been tracking every change since 1997, we've had a high degree of confidence in our ability to restore this major component from the original version of World of Warcraft. Next up, I want to talk about how we worked with our database data. Now, to shed a little bit of light, early on, we only had really a simplistic model. There were two versions of the game. There was the version that was live and available to the public, and the next patch that we were working on. Once we were ready to release that patch, we would push it to the live services and make it available to everyone. Now, we would immediately then turn around and start working on the next patch, but we were doing it directly over the previous data. This had the unfortunate side effect of some amount of data loss in some of these earlier patches. We also encountered other problems here in that the team could only ever work on one patch at a time. This was quickly rectified, and we're now able to work on multiple patch schemas at a time. So when going back and looking at our database data, we took our clock, we cracked open this database and said, how far back do you still have data for?
Ooh.
Fortunately, we still had patch 112 and slightly before. So this gave us sort of a medium level of confidence in our ability to restore original database data. Next up, I want to talk about art assets. There are many types of art assets. Some of the most familiar are what we call 3D models. And these are comprised of vertices, which are simply points in three-dimensional space, and indices that tell us how to connect
What is that?
these.
It's a kobold.
Also, hopefully familiar, are textures. These are paintings and colors that are drawn on a two-dimensional canvas. We can take these various art assets, and once we start combining them, we're able to see a few familiar faces. Now, with art assets, we store those on some network storage that we have. And so when we went digging, we unfortunately found that we only had a few of the more recent art assets from the more recent expansions. But this project was very important to us, and we went all the way to our data archivists and asked, do you have any old backups of these old network drives? We need them. We desperately want to go back to the original data. Now, this data was actually off-site, and we weren't sure what we were going to find until some of the old backups were restored from very old tape drives. We did receive a backup from 2008, and we thought, well, the date's good, but not exactly what we're looking for. We dug into it a little bit more, and fortunately, we found on that backup a folder labeled Final 112 Data. Yeah, that's right. We found a backup on our backup of a backup.
That's good.
Now that we have 112 versions of these three major components, our source code, our database data, and our art assets, we're ready to attempt to reconstruct 112 with these pieces. We shoved them all in a blender, and to our amazing delight, we had a version of 112 that we can launch and run internally. We were able to log in. We can create characters.
Dude, the 112.
Could level up and do all the things that we remembered. This was an amazing milestone for us. But we then needed to take a step back and think about what this version really meant. It's important to understand that our services, that this version of the game was engineered for a much older version of the internet. This version didn't understand how to run in our modern Blizzard cloud. We also realized that our game servers don't operate in a vacuum. They're an integral and important piece of a larger Battle.net Blizzard network framework,
Motor food.
which includes things like account management and authentication. This version was also unable to work in our content delivery pipeline, so there was no way we could put this version on our Battle.net desktop app. Again, without access to authentication, there were no login servers it could talk to. There was no way this version could talk to our customer support systems. You couldn't enter GM tickets. But really, most harsh of all was that every bug, every problem, every exploit would instantly come screaming back. And not only that, they would already be known to some number of malicious people out there. Clearly, this version, as it stood, as it was, didn't really reflect the highest levels of Blizzard quality that we come to expect. But we weren't quite ready to give up. We took a long, hard look at what we had built so far, and we thought a lot of what we don't like about this version is in the source code. It still had a lot that we really loved. We loved the database data, and we loved the art. So we gave ourselves a little bit of a thought experiment. Force this together, what would that even look like? We gave ourselves a little bit of research and development time, and we thought, well, let's just work on transforming this data, see if there's a way that they can meet in the middle. What does that experience look like? Should be a video clip of that.
Okay.
So here we have a very early prototype. This was effectively a 7.3.5 client and server with its database data stripped out and imported from the 1.12 version of our data. We had a lot of systems that we liked. You could still cast your fireballs, you can kill creatures, the spawns from 1.12 were there. The drop tables had worked, a lot of the server-side elements were there, which included things like having to learn class abilities, even if you didn't have enough money to buy them at the time. True to form, you might have to leave and come back sometime later once you ground up that little extra copper. Now, of course, this was a very early prototype. We were forcing this data in, and it still obviously wasn't going to work out quite right as it had errors, problems, but this is an important piece of research and prototyping. Combat wasn't quite there. We found ourselves stopping to drink way too often.
Oh, come on.
But really, the core of the game was there. You
Supposed to be drinking all the time, bitch?
You still bought your spells. You still turned in your quests, and you still leveled up. The core pieces of the World of Warcraft nugget was there, but it was running on our modern infrastructure.
Okay.
This was what really gave us the proof that this was a way forward, that this could actually work. This insane idea would lead us to World of Warcraft Classic. And now, to talk a little bit more about the challenges of going from proof of concept prototype to full-blown production, it's my honor to introduce lead engineer Brian Birmingham.
Hi, Brian.
Hello, BlizzCon!
He's too happy. Stop it.
My name is Brian Birmingham, and I'm the lead software engineer on World of Warcraft Classic. I am a huge fan of retro gaming. I love to go back and play old games from my past, games that I played growing up, and World of Warcraft is certainly one of them.
Okay, it's blurry.
I've been playing since the beta, and it's just a great game that captured my heart even back then.
Is this a problem with the video, or is it me?
But
I don't understand. Let me go back a tiny bit and see if he's still blurry.
Warcraft is
It's the
certainly one
video.
of them.
Okay.
I've been playing since the beta, and it's just a great game that captured my heart even back then. But when I heard that World of Warcraft team was going to make WoW Classic, I jumped at the opportunity to come back and lead this team. But it's not my first time being on the World of Warcraft team. I first joined Blizzard in 2006, and I was on the World of Warcraft tools team. And at that time, I joined to help ship Naxxramas and to improve the way that we make World of Warcraft. I spent the next 8 years doing that. And then some of the other things I did were take the database data as it evolved over those years and convert it to each of our new expansions. And so in some ways, this project is like replaying all that work again in fast forward.
I like his shirt. It's linen.
I want to talk about these building blocks that Omar mentioned. These building blocks come together to create some of the things that you recognize as players. Things like terrain, the gameplay systems, the animations, and the lighting. And the first one of these that I want to talk about is terrain. Terrain is the heights of the mountains and the valleys. It's the placement of the trees and the buildings throughout the world. It's the water that's in the lakes, the rivers, the streams, the oceans. And there's a reason why in the prototype that you saw from Omar, we were in Dunmoreau. And it's because that terrain was unaltered by the cataclysm. So it weren't perfect for that first prototype. But if we were to venture just a little bit outside of Dunmoreau and into Loch Modan, you start to see some kind of funny things. Like these Threshodons that are supposed to be swimming, but they're walking around on land, and they seem to have built these little Murloc huts for themselves, and that's not right. There's also this purple cape on the gnome, and that's odd. That's not like an epic. That's missing texture purple, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. For now, let's focus on the fact that the water is missing and that those are the wrong buildings. If we go to other places, like, say, Thousand Needles, we'll find water that shouldn't be there. And there's Kolkar camping underneath the water and building fires. So this is also not okay. So we said, okay, just like we did with the data, what if we take this terrain files, these old terrain files we found on that backup of a backup, and we fed them to World of Warcraft Classic, to our modern engine? Would this work? No. This doesn't work either. And the reason is those puzzle shapes that Omar mentioned. Things don't fit together. Imagine this is the shape of the 112 terrain data, and our 112 engine expects that shape. So if we feed it the 112 terrain data, it fits perfectly. Our reference client that we built understands exactly where to find all of these pieces. Our modern engine expects the same pieces, but in slightly different places. And so when we feed it and of course our modern terrain data fits it perfectly. If we feed it the 112 data, it doesn't fit perfectly. It finds some things where it wants to find them, like the terrain heights and the water and the grass, but it doesn't find the object placements from 112. It finds the new ones instead. So to give you an example of what that looks like, I have another video, again of Loch Modan here. So here you can see some of the buildings look okay. But as we start to fly out over the lake, which now has the water back, you can see some trees that aren't supposed to be there. Those are object placements. Those are burned trees from the cataclysm. And then a tree flying in the middle of the air, and that's clearly not right. There's some misplaced buildings from Grim Batol. And if we turn back toward the dam, you can see the dam is shattered. And yet somehow, even though the dam is shattered, it's able to hold back the water. So here we said there's clearly more work to do here. And our modern tools come to the rescue. It turns out that we have modern tools that we've been developing over the last 14 years that know how to read our old terrain data. They also know how to produce our modern terrain data. And so then we can take that terrain data after it's been converted and give it to the modern engine. And then the modern engine finds everything that it expects to find exactly where it expects to find it. And now the dam is restored.
Fuck, that scared me.
Our tools are really important to this. So
got really quiet for a
these.
second.
We wanted to make sure that our tools could work not only on Battle for Azeroth, but also on WoW Classic at the same time. This was some effort, but we thought it was really worth it because World of Warcraft Classic is not a small side project. This is a fully integrated effort that has the full support of the World of Warcraft development team.
Yay! Again, I can't believe I haven't seen this. This is like a super cool video.
I want to talk to you about some other
Then again,
art
I'm retarded,
assets.
so the way he explains things makes me understand.
And they're not just the character models or the creature models, but also those trees, those huts, the buildings, the lampposts. Why is that lamppost purple? Is that lamppost supposed to be purple? We have the reference client. Let's check. No. It's not supposed to be purple. It's supposed to be white.
The audio.
So why the difference? That's the same model. Why doesn't it look the same? And the reason it doesn't look the same is that we've made a change in the way our engine handles errors. In this case, in 112, we displayed when there was a missing thing, a white light. So in the case of the gnome's cape, you remember it was purple. And in the case of this light, this lamppost, it's purple as well. And it's because something's missing. We set up this model, and we told it that...
Give me 1 second. Dogs are freaking out.